Okay. Seeing as how we're still working on this portion of the vehicle, we're going to go ahead and take our spur gear cover and we're going to remove the pins that are on here. Hold it up in the camera here, because we will not be using body clips to hold this on anymore. You know, it's funny, these things always fall out when you don't want them to, and you can't never get them out when you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and take those out and be right back. Boy, was that a battle. Not quite sure why, but we managed to get them out. So what we're going to do at this point is set the cover over, just like so, and press it on. And then we're going to use 2 of the M5 by 20 screws, which are included in the kit. We're going to screw this on rather than using the body clips like we do when we're using a fuel motor. And it uses a big head on these things. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and screw that one in. You don't have to crank down. Just going to want to make sure that it seats on there. And the same with the bottom one. We sure are getting close here. We've come this far, and if you remember back in the 3rd video, I believe it was, we were trying to figure out why they didn't have us put a screw in this hole back here on the top plate. And I still haven't been able to figure it out, so we're going to go ahead and pop one in there right now so that we don't forget. And again, that's just on the top plate. For whatever reason, the Castle directions didn't have us putting a screw in there. Back out a little bit so you can see. Okay. Well, it looks like we're getting a lot closer here. I think the next step that we're going to do, I believe, is to mount the let's mount the ESC onto the back plate. So we're going to go ahead and grab that, get it prepared, and mount it up. Our next step is going to be to mount the ESC onto the back plate. If you take a look at your back plate, there are 4 holes located here, which are going to line up with the 4 holes or the 4 slots that are on the ESC. To mount that up, we're going to use the last M3 by 8 screws, and there's 4 of them. And again, this is a metal-to-metal connection, so we're going to go ahead and use a little bit of Loctite on each one of the holes. And during our pre-assembly, we found it a lot easier to go ahead and pre-start 2 of the little screws on one side. So we're going to go ahead and just put them in about halfway. And we're going to do that on one side. Now we're going to take the ESC and we're going to take the 3-wire portion, and that is going to point backwards as we insert it. And it's best just to, right at this point, go ahead and bring those through the rear. We're going to make sure all of the other wires are out of the way. We're going to set this down so that nothing is pinching on the base. We're going to slide, it's kind of hard to see on the film here, but we're going to slide the 2 slots on the one side into the 2 screws that we had put in earlier. And then at this point, we're going to go ahead and put the other 2 screws in on the other side of the ESC. You're not going to want to fully tighten them down until all 4 screws are in, so that you can get the proper alignment. Excuse me. Okay, we got all 4 screws in. And tighten that down a little bit. Don't need to go too tight. You don't want to strip the holes out. They are pretty small screws. That Loctite should hold them in pretty good. If you would like to, you might put some thin two-sided tape on the bottom like you would on any other ESC. But again, that's up to you. Alright. There we go. Our ESC is now in and properly mounted. We're going to take all these wires for now, just kind of pull them back and tuck them out of the way until we have time to shorten and route and solder what needs to be done. So now we have installed the ESC onto the top plate. Next thing we're going to do is install the fan shroud. So hang loose, let me go grab that fan shroud and we'll get rolling on it. Alright, we're going to go ahead and install the fan shroud. And an interesting thing about doing these videos and posting them up is I had a user contact me and say, hey, look underneath the packing in the shroud. And I said, okay. So what did we find? We found some zip ties. So thank you very much. We do listen to the people that comment on our videos. Hindsight as well always gives us 20/20 vision. If I was going to do this video over again, I would probably mount the fan shroud up before I put the motor in. And again, we would put the cables pointing up and we would put the fan shroud on and go ahead and zip tie it first. You can put it on now like we're going to, but it is a little bit more difficult. If you are going to put it on first, what I have found during our pre-fitment of this is it doesn't go on straight. So don't try to put it in the center of the motor and press it on and zip tie it. The back of the shroud has to press directly against the plastic housing where the wires are. If you try to put it in the center and put it on, it's going to hit the back brace here and not quite fit. You're going to have to take it off and move it. So slide it all the way as far as possible to the back of the motor before you zip tie it. So what we're going to do is go ahead and take our zip ties, and there's some little zip tie holes here actually, and we're going to go ahead and put our zip ties through these holes just like so. We're going to do that on both. And the hard part, which I'm probably not going to do on video, is we're going to have to fish these zip ties down through the bottom of the motor and around so that we can properly get them attached in. But you're going to go ahead and put those little puppies on like that. And you're going to make sure that your wire's not getting caught and captured underneath and pinched. Make sure that that's out. And then you're going to put the fan shroud as far towards the back of the motor as possible and slide it on. Going to make sure our zip ties are turned in the proper direction so that they zip properly. We're going to go ahead and seat this down. It's got to be square. We're going to go ahead and seat that down onto the motor. There we go. Just like that. And believe it or not, there actually is quite a bit of finger room under here to pull the zip ties through and fish them underneath the motor. There we go. So it's actually not that difficult. Make sure our other wires aren't getting pinched or captured. So we got this one on. We're going to go ahead and zip it. There we go. So that's how the fan attaches. And you don't have to crank down on these zip ties too hard. You just want them nice and snug so that that shroud stays on. Go ahead and clip the ends of those off when you're done. And that's how you install the shroud onto the motor.